Hello and welcome to the E-commerce Odyssey podcast. Today we're talking to Jason Russell from Magentity. He's going to be telling us about what they do at their company and the wonderful work they're doing with Magento and other e-commerce platforms. Jason, would you like to tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. Nice to see you again, Tim, and thanks for inviting me on. Basically, we are a e-commerce and digital marketing agency, and basically specialise in working with SMEs and helping them and startups, helping them to get into the wonderful world of e-commerce, giving them a really good, sure footing in terms of having a good website, using best practices, and basically being able to sort of get a return on their investment, because it's not it's mega expensive, but it's not a cheap thing to do. So we like to think, with all our experience, and I've used to be head of e-com in other guises, so we've got a good grounding across technology and digital marketing and best practice and SEO and all those sorts of things. So we can usually steer the client in the right direction to making sure that they do get a good return.
So is it what platforms do you guys develop in?
Our platform of choice is Magento, hence the name. I've been working in that since we started the company 11 years ago, with obviously different changes where Magento has had different versions. It's moved from Magento 1 to Magento 2, and clients and businesses have moved to Shopify, so we work with that. We've just taken on a couple of WooCommerce projects as well. So we tend to focus on those three. I think that it's quite dangerous if you have an agency that potentially works with like 5 or 6 different platforms, because we consider ourselves to be the masters of Magentity, of Magento, sorry. But Shopify is pretty similar. So we've got some Shopify specialists within the team. So we stick to those three, to be honest.
So do you get involved in do you use the front end, or do you get involved in the back end stuff as well?
Both. Although my philosophy on all of this, and again, I sort of stress, having sat the side of the head of e-commerce who we're talking to, or the marketing director, or the company owner, is we tend to work with a really good solid theme, which then sort of doesn't negate the need for design, but a theme will already be pre-built, responsive, work across multiple resolutions and tablets and desktops, all that sort of stuff. So and we tend to just tweak the theme according to the client's requirements. So there's some front end work there, making sure that invariably every theme does have the odd bug where you need to tweak it for mobile, but it invariably cuts down the time.
So what is so obviously, okay, so the theme is these days quite templated. What is the bulk of your work? What is it that takes the time in setting up Magento?
Well, again, Magento is a bit of a beast. There's more coding there, and if you look at any article on the pros and cons of Shopify versus Magento, there are significant differences in coding requirements. So we've got a dedicated Magento team who are able to set up the whole system, build in the template, making sure that obviously that they're both, Magento's, the community edition's free, making sure that is all ready and good to go for the client, and implementing different plugins for the different functionality requirements that they have. Whereas Shopify is a bit more sort of plug and go.
Right.
I was speaking to someone yesterday who's set up their own Shopify store, not much of a coder, but they've got the hang of it and they can more or less do it themselves. But there are still things where, some mobile issues with the template that, they need maybe more of a specialist sort of coding requirement. So, that's what we do.
So what about the $1 million question, right? Okay, so Magento or Shopify, or what is the because I've heard it said that Magento, is more configurable, but I certainly know Magento is a beast and it's complicated and it's hard to know how to configure it. And I'm not sure anyone knows how to configure it.
Oh well,
does anyone know how to configure it?
Well, we do. So that's the reason why we've been working.
Maybe you're the only people that know how to do it.
As I said, I've been head of ecom for number of big companies, and if I'd have known about or Magento existed back in the day, I would have gone Magento and I would have invested in it. And it depends where you are in your e-commerce journey. If you're a smallish company starting out, you've got maybe 30 or 40 SKUs, maybe a bit more, and you do your own fulfillment, or even if you outsource your fulfillment, but you're starting out on your journey. Shopify is a really good place to start. If you're just sticking in the UK, that's great. However, if you're quite serious about e-commerce, it's you've got multinational, multi-currency requirements. You want a little bit more flexibility in terms of your checkout and all that sort of stuff. Then Magento is the thing. That's what I would go with. Because yes, it is a beast, completely agree. But if you've got a company that knows how to tame that beast, it's a good thing to have, because you can do a lot more with it to get what you want in the long run. And I think it's actually more scalable. So I mean, from Shopify, you can go to Shopify Plus, and that's about £2 grand a month. Whereas Community Edition Magento, that's sort of the equivalent of Shopify Plus, to be honest. I very rarely recommend Magento Enterprise for my clients. And it tends to be a bit of a vanity process. And if you want
you don't think, when would you use Magento Enterprise? I
mean, I think when you start to become a bit more corporate and you have a lot of requirements, it's like a 60,000 to £70,000 piece of kit,
Right.
So you're buying a license. It's a bit like Demandware. It's for the really, really seriously big guns. I mean, I see SMEs anywhere from 500,000 to say 15,
right,
a bit more, but that's online. So if you're turning over more than that, then I would look to go enterprise.
Okay.
A bit more beef.
So have you got a bit of money to burn, basically? If you got like a...
Well, again, as I say, it depends where you are in your e-commerce journey. So, for example, I'll give you a really good example. We've got a client called Cutler and Gross who make really cool eyewear. They're on a bespoke platform, which they sort of struggled with. We built a B2C, business to consumer website for them, and built a Canadian, American, and European part of the website on Magento. If we were to do that on Shopify, we'd have had to build 4 separate websites. Whereas with Magento, and populate 4 different sets of products, and they've got about 800 they've got over 1,000 different SKUs. So we'd have had to do that 4 times. Whereas Magento, you put the SKUs in once and then just allocate them to the different country websites, and it's just a lot easier. So you can give each with the separate plugins, you can give each country separate stock levels and things like that. Just in a sense, you're managing it in one location, whereas in Shopify, you'd have to manage it in 4 locations.
Okay, so is it a case of with great power comes great responsibility?
Oh, blimey. I mean, I'm a Spider-Man fan, so yeah.
Because you got the reference.
Yeah, but I mean, with Shopify, say you wanted to change the homepage, you'd have to do it 4 times if you wanted 4 different ones. And with Magento, you can upload 4 images. And it's just a lot easier, in my humble opinion, and I'm super biased, I know. I just think Magento's a brilliant fit.
So we've just started my retail business, Hello Baby. We've just started using Glowpal. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't heard of Glowpal.
That is a kind of a out of the box. It's a solution for doing a localization of your website.
Yeah.
So if you've got for example, you can do Google Shopping in, I don't know, 20 countries or something.
Yeah.
Right. It basically takes the UK version of your website and copies it and automatically translates it, which you can do yourself in Magento, but it's a bit of a pain and it's difficult to keep it up to date. So we'll see how well that works. So you think it's horses for courses, really? You think, maybe if you're starting off, then Shopify is a really good platform, but as you grow, you should look at Magento.
I think so, yeah, depending on where your digital business goes, for sure. I mean, on an average sort of Shopify build for us would be anywhere from 150 to 200 hours.
Right.
Whereas a Magento build, it's 300 to 400.
Right. Okay. So it's quite a big
There's
difference.
more work to do,
Mhm.
ultimately. But for me, I think the end result is better. As you say, you talk about flexibility. In Magento, you can change the checkout and that process a lot. It's a lot more flexible in changing that.
Mhm. Are there more plugins available for Magento or Shopify?
Excuse me?
And which one's got the more plugins?
I wouldn't know. I mean, well,
They've both got a lot.
I would argue Magento, actually, because we tend to use 5 or 6 different providers depending upon the plugin and functionality that we need. I'm a big fan of Amasti. They're great. Headworks are good. Mirazvit is good. Extento we use a lot for product feeds, and there's Wiremind and things like that.
Yeah.
We try to obviously use the plugins that are, have got the best reviews, that are bug free, because there's nothing worse than putting in a plugin and it causes more issues. I mean, that was very much the case 10, 11 years ago, but not so much now. I think it's tested a lot better, which is great. So I mean, Shopify's got a ton of plugins. The difference is that with Magento, what I've noticed is that they're one-off fees. With Shopify, they're ongoing.
Right. Okay.
You might spend £110 on a bit of functionality for Magento, and Shopify will charge you sort of 20 quid a month. So they end up being a bit more expensive. If you've got a lot, then but so just to cut in there, that's one of the reasons why you choose Shopify or Magento or WooCommerce or any of these big off-the-shelf platforms, is because the additional functionality that there is to plug into your website. You don't have to build it. So never ever ever go bespoke.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. So would you ever see a situation where someone should go bespoke?
100 million% bad idea.
Why would you do it?
The reason you shouldn't do it is because you're tying yourself into one agency. Is the first thing. So, for example, when we work with many clients. Some clients stick with us for 3 or 4 years. I've got clients that I've had for 10 years. Some move on after a year, and that's the great thing. There's always another Shopify or Magento company. Whereas if you go bespoke, you're tied in with that company. And if you want additional functionality, they have to invariably build it from the beginning.
Yeah.
And by the time they built it, it's sort of out of date anyway. So again, I've had a client where they shall remain nameless, but it was another client who we moved to Magento. They had a bespoke platform, and they were being quoted the same amount of money to add in like customer account section and reviews onto the bespoke platform as we were quoting more or less to build them a new website.
Right. I mean, I had a company I came across in my sector called Kidley, and they've developed their website from scratch, I believe. And they were saying, they were talking about their MVP, that they were basically tying down, constricting the functionality that they're going to have on the website they were building. And I thought, no, the MVP is using Magento.
Yeah.
Why would you? You could have got it. You could have got the whole thing live 6 months earlier if you hadn't built the thing from scratch. But it looks lovely.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, Magento's got a community of millions, and they're constantly adding to it. It's constantly improving, and there's to get millions of people together are more wise and more clever than one person sitting in
wisdom of the crowds.
Exactly.
And all that. So so something I've struggled with recently is website speed. So it's very, very easy to take a website and run it through like a web speed measure tool, a metric tool of some description. Yeah. And in my experience, it's very, 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 very hard to improve the speed.
Yeah.
So, and it got me so I hired an agency that obviously, like to point out, wasn't you guys. And they managed to, after, talking big about how they could transform the speed. Because I thought, my colleague had built the whole thing. He's great, but he's only worked on one site. I thought, well, we could get an agency and they would have experience across lots of different sites. And I just expected them to click their fingers and just tick a few boxes and it would all be done.
Magic it away.
Magic it away, which I don't think was unreasonable. If you've got like a specialist, they should be able to improve things. And they made it a little bit faster after expending a lot of time and gold. And so now I don't even know, I'm getting quite philosophical about speed. What is speed? How do you measure speed? What should we expect from an e-commerce site? Discuss.
That's another discussion in itself. I mean, there's a load of parameters. I mean, having spoken to my technical guys about this, I mean, the principles that in terms of making sure that we give a website the best possible sort of platform to abide by best practice, is you need good clean code. There's no two ways about it. So if you're going to use Magento and you've got an agency, make sure that obviously they've got lots of examples of their work, and you can have a look at their websites, etc., so that they know what they're doing. We've won a load of clients in the past where websites just aren't quick enough, or they're just badly developed and they're very buggy, and that's just where they're just not coded it properly. They don't understand it, and that is one of the downsides of Magento. You need good people to do it. You need reliable hosting, really important. Optimizing your images and image loading, making sure that you've got good proper server-side components with correct configuration, like varnish cache, optimized database. You've got a good on-site search engine like Elasticsearch, which are more for more Magento and Woo. You're losing CDN like Cloudflare, and that sort of speeds up asset loading and things like that. And all these things coming together should help. But I mean, as an SME, it's sort of, to a certain degree, you're bound by your audience as well. Because if let's just say your audience has got a really slow connection, no matter how fast you think your website is, if it's not loading quick enough for a customer, which might not be your fault, it's never going to work.
Right. Because I just don't know. I mean, is it, because I say, in my experience, it's very easy to say, oh, a website's slow, but then you go and compare your website. So you take a website, you put it into
let's put it into sort of some kind of realism in terms of, I see all these stats of, if you sped up your site by 0.1 of a second, you increase your conversion rate. So in 0.1 of a second, if a site is, it loads after 1.4 seconds, which it's all these standard, I don't know off the top of my head the standard metrics, but I mean, in the be all and end all of a client experience, it's not going to be that much. So I mean, as long as you abide by core principles and get it working, good hosting, as I was saying, optimize the imaging, blah blah blah, you should be okay. And it's very, for an SME, I mean, it's very difficult to sort of, I know what you've done. I mean, it might have been a sort of a sledgehammer to crack a walnut type of.
I don't know. I've given up on it now. I think there
are far more important things to worry about in terms of, as long as it's tested thoroughly.
I think it's easy. I think it's a lazy thing for agencies to basically take your website and run it through one of these tools and go look at any scores.
I never
12 out of.
I never sort of try and win clients based on, oh, your site's really slow, and scare them into something. That's just not.
Well, because my experience, I mean, if you take our website, I think is comes at like 14 or 15 out of 100. But then if you take John Lewis's website, it's not an awful lot better. So what is it? I mean, if you've got like a single web, maybe just all e-commerce sites are slow. So not something to get too worked up about.
No, for me, no. I mean, it comes out in the testing anyway. Obviously, if it's, I would notice if the site was really slow that we developed, and I would sort of let my guys know. But it's not it's not something I worry about per se.
Okay.
So what is half a second?
Yeah.
Been friends.
Well, okay, so now that websites are basically becoming more templated, and you mentioned that you believe in finding a really good template. Do you think that, I mean, does this mean that websites are becoming more samey? And in which case, how is it that if people are using templates more and the whole experience is becoming templated and people are using, a lot more people are using checkouts like Klarna, how do e-commerce companies differentiate themselves?
That's a brilliant, brilliant point. I'm going to have to agree with you, actually. I think websites are becoming samey. I did a study of, given my sort of beauty background, I basically did a study of 64 beauty websites for a presentation I was doing. And I looked at makeup, hair, and skincare. And it was incredible, especially in the makeup scenario. They more or less all look the same.
Yeah.
Brown, whether it was Laura Mercier, whether it was Rimmel. I mean, literally, they might have different components. But ultimately, it does come down to, and I think the e-commerce industry, after all of these years, it's sort of settled into some kind of best practice. There are certain key things that you sort of need on a homepage, that you sort of need on a category page.
Yeah.
Just how you skin that. Because I'm a very much of a person of a belief of don't reinvent the wheel, because and by that I mean don't try and design your own website and come up with funky new designs and funky new calls to action and all this sort of stuff, because you'll just confuse people. I think the general consumer out there is so used to now knowing that you're going to have a sort of a homepage carousel image, you're going to have some content, you're going to have a couple of products, you might have some blog information, you might have an Instagram feed and that type of thing. And also you've got to remember that with mobile is a big thing, so it's just going to be very blocky anyway. I mean, 60-70% of the audience is a mobile now, so there's not much you can really differentiate there. And there's just best practices, aren't there? I mean, you always make sure that you have your buy now button, or your call to action buttons above the fold. You might have sticky navigation. We've done some playing around with sort of sticky buy buttons, so you can just scroll down the left-hand side and the buy button stays there. There's different ways to do that, but there are just key components, best practice components that you would have on a website that people expect to see, in my humble opinion. So there's no point. I mean, the difference comes in with maybe fonts, with colors and imagery, different size blocks, but again, you've got to be wary of mobile elements.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, a template for me is my way of keeping the cost down, because design costs can go into tens of thousands, and that's where you're really careful.
Or when you have multiple versions and you compare, but you can spend any amount of money on that.
I mean, as I say, in my sphere, and I'm not, we've got Cullen Gross as one of our bigger clients. We didn't want to design. They wanted quite a minimalist feel anyway, but we knew that we didn't need to design anything really utterly bespoke for them, because otherwise, you've got to do it for tablet, you've got to do it for desktop, you've got to do it for mobile. There's the budget blown already.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, that's one of the key reasons I like to use a template. And some of the things that we use, they're really, really solid, and you can tweak them, you can move them around.
So with your clients, okay, because my thing is marketplaces, right, for my sins, and in places like China, where people don't trust each other, they basically almost everything goes through marketplaces. So almost everything goes through Tmall, right? Yeah. Do you see your clients selling more other marketplace businesses growing, or are they focusing on their websites?
They're focusing on their websites. I mean, I think everyone is. It depends on the brand itself. The more luxury brands are sticking away from the marketplaces because they want to make sure that they keep some kind of ownership over their brand and how it's used. Got some clients who obviously they're on Amazon doing very well, and for them it's all about pack it high, sell it cheap.
Right. Yeah.
And it really does depend on the brand ethos. Again, Cutler and Gross, they don't really want to be going on Amazon or eBay, and they won't. They might.
Amazon, I mean, Amazon is trying to get these. It's becoming much more of a brand
Oh God, yeah. I
launching
mean,
platform. They're trying to
Amazon
get.
Beauty, all that type of stuff. They're trying to do that, and but I think it's not for everyone.
Yeah, interesting.
Depends where you want to go.
So, what do you mean? What do you see the most successful e-commerce companies doing? I mean, what are the trends?
It depends on how you define success. I mean, again, as I say, I haven't been a head of e-com. Usually, my success was, bound by sales, and invariably it is, right? Because they pay the bills. So I think that for me, an e-commerce, if you put it into a simple e-commerce strategy of proposition, your website being usable, functional, best practice. The next strategy is acquisition. So you look at SEO, you look at PPC, you look at affiliates, you look at social. You've got sort of best of breed kit in terms of email marketing. You look at conversion, you're not scared of doing promotions and offers, and you've got good customer service. You're using every possible plug-in and bit of tech that you could possibly use, still being cost effective. You look at retention strategy, so you're using loyalty. Companies still aren't really adopting loyalty, which I find strange because
So you're saying you're just going to do everything well? Is the
you can do everything well, and again, it depends where you are in your e-commerce journey. I work with SMEs and who are building their team slowly but surely, but that team build is sort of dependent upon how big the e-commerce sales can grow to. And I think that the best e-commerce companies are using best of breed technology in their, whether it be Magento or Woo or Shopify or e-commerce or Demandware or whatever it might be, SAP, Commerce Cloud, etc., etc. I think is now Demandware anyway. But I think the best e-commerce companies are not scared to test and try things and just get out there and open up their doors. And that does also mean, depending upon where their brand is, selling on Amazon and maybe trying to, eBay is slightly different, but every single acquisition channel they've investigated and they're trying to use. And they're using loyalty programs and they're using Klarna or Splitly, and they're trying to give themselves a point of difference, and they're analyzing their customers via Google Analytics or whatever analytics solution they're using, and they're trying to segment their audience. And that you need a big team. This was a long time ago. I was head of e-com for lookfantastic.com, which is now owned by the Hut Group, huge entity. But we grew from 4 of us to I think about 70 before they were bought out, and I had a team of about 6 or 7 people, and we were running a £4 or £5 million online business, which was a big part of what we did. So you need a lot of hands on deck, and you need good knowledgeable people. Technology e-commerce tech wasn't as good back then as it is now.
Yeah, it's an awful lot more things that you can just when Amazon first started off, they had to build everything from scratch, and it cost them hundreds of thousands of pounds, and you can just get those things basically for free these days.
Yes.
The number of things you can get for free is just amazing. So last question, what has inspired you recently?
I'll tell you what has inspired me recently is sort of, given that I still get my hands dirty with a number of clients, and it's great for you as well. It's a plugin, it's a SaaS product called Shoptimized, which manages your Google Shopping feed.
Is it good? It's
absolutely, and I should be getting paid for this, and I'm not. It's absolutely amazing.
Nice.
It enables you to, in a sense, clone your products and get the same product under different terms onto Google Shopping. So again, I've got one client who's got about 500 or 600 SKUs, and we're able to clone those products to have for different colors or different sizes. Really easy to use, give you loads of information on how to improve your your Google Shopping visibility, and that has really, that for me is just, I know the owner who founded it, and they're super busy, and they're only going to get busier because you talk about marketplaces. Google Shopping is just going to continue to grow, and it's sort of slowly but
Yeah.
surely keeping up with PPC, AdWords. It's a brilliant bit of kit, and I highly enough recommend.
Okay, that's a good tip. I think they have approached us as well. Actually, I'll have to take a look at it.
Yeah, say hello to John Cave.
Okay, Jason, it's been great talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll maybe talk to you again soon.
Hope so. That'd be good.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.